problem?
I don't know. My husband was sitting in the bowling alley. Something happened.
I'm sorry, your husband what?
He's stuck. He's stuck.
What happened with your husband?
I don't know. Something with the bowling alley. He's stuck.
Can't move this finger 100% over, but I gotta get one more surgery so that I can get that finger over. See how it's like, you know, as I spread it?
Maybe we'll put some filler in here to,
Maybe we'll put a little filler. I'll put some face filler in there.
Buddy Valastro built his entire life with his hands, until one night, those same hands were almost taken from him. For more than a decade, Cake Boss made him one of television's biggest stars, but the cameras captured only a fraction of what was happening in his life. Behind the cakes was a story of loss, pressure, family, and a devastating accident that changed everything. So what really happened to Buddy Valastro? And what was the Cake Boss story hiding in plain sight? Join us as we uncover what really happened to Buddy Valastro, the man everyone thought they knew. Buddy Valastro was only 11 when he started washing bowls for his father at Carlo's Bakery in Hoboken. At 17, standing at his father's hospital bedside, he learned his dad had lung cancer and made a promise on the spot to keep the bakery alive. His father died 3 weeks later, in 1994. Buddy dropped out and ran the shop full-time, alongside his mother, Mary, and his 4 older sisters, mastering every station the hands-on way his father had insisted he learn it. Because he didn't see himself as a naturally gifted artist, he leaned into invention instead, teaching himself fondant work and dreaming up cakes that didn't look like cakes at all, hoping that if the taste stayed true to his father's recipes, the look could be something nobody in the business had tried. That gamble is what eventually separated Carlo's from every other neighborhood bakery in New Jersey. That grind eventually landed him on the Food Network's Food Network Challenge in 2007, where a competition win gave him the confidence to pitch a reality show about daily life inside the bakery. TLC picked it up. Cake Boss premiered on April 19, 2009, and within a few years, Buddy had turned a single Hoboken storefront into a multi-state chain. While the show's popularity grew, Buddy's life off-camera was moving through its own turbulence. Running a national brand while still being, at heart, a neighborhood baker meant carrying pressures that never made it into the episode cuts. Every new season meant more locations to manage, more staff to train, and more pressure to top the last impossible cake, all while the cameras kept rolling regardless of what else was happening in his life that week. But here is the thing. Longtime fans didn't fully register at the time. The version of Buddy Valastro that America watched every week wasn't the complete picture, because that seemingly perfect life was about to be tested. You can't arrest me. I'm the boss. In November 2014, at the height of the show's popularity, Buddy was pulled over in Manhattan's Hudson Yards neighborhood. Police said they had watched his yellow Corvette swerving through traffic near Penn Station around 1 in the morning. When officers asked him to step out of the car, they noted he was unsteady on his feet. His eyes were bloodshot, and he smelled of alcohol. According to the arresting officers, when they moved to take him into custody, Buddy told them he couldn't be arrested because he was the Cake Boss. He reportedly asked to be put in a cab instead, insisting he wasn't a bad guy and didn't need to be taken in. It didn't work. He was charged with driving while intoxicated and driving while ability impaired, and the story exploded across entertainment news within hours, turning what should have been a routine traffic stop into a national headline by that afternoon. Buddy initially rejected a plea deal from prosecutors and was arraigned on 2 counts of drunk driving without entering a plea at all. By December, though, he changed course and pleaded guilty to driving while impaired by alcohol, a lesser violation rather than a full criminal charge. The court sentenced him to a conditional discharge, a $300 fine, and a mandatory drunk driving program, along with a 90-day license suspension. He posted an apology afterward, admitting he had put people in danger and that he was disappointed in himself. A rare moment of public vulnerability for a man whose brand had always leaned on confidence. For a brand built almost entirely around family values and hometown charm, the arrest was the first real crack in the image. It didn't end his career, but it was the first sign that the polished version of Buddy Valastro fans saw on television wasn't the whole story. TLC never addressed the arrest on air, and the show continued production largely as if nothing had happened, which only made the disconnect between the on-screen Buddy and the real one more noticeable to anyone paying attention. That crack would eventually be followed by a loss that hit even closer to home. Losing the anchor. In 2017, Buddy's mother, Mary Valastro, died after a battle with ALS at the age of 69. She had co-founded the bakery's modern identity alongside her late husband, and after his death in 1994, she'd run the business hand in hand with Buddy and his 4 sisters, remaining a steady presence on the show for years, often serving as the emotional anchor whenever the kitchen chaos threatened to boil over. Buddy closed every Carlo's Bakery location worldwide on the day of her passing as a mark of remembrance, then stepped away from filming for nearly 2 years to grieve with his family. Cake Boss continued airing without him during part of that stretch, but ratings slipped as a wave of new baking competition shows crowded the genre Cake Boss had helped create nearly a decade earlier. When Buddy returned for what became Season 9 on May 18, 2019, the show had moved from TLC to the smaller Discovery Family network, a shift some viewers barely noticed and others saw as a clear signal the show's biggest days were behind it. He was back in the kitchen, back on camera, and by every outward appearance, back to business as usual. Then came the accident that would test everything his career had been built on. The accident that almost ended it all. On a Sunday night in September 2020, Buddy was bowling with his family at the alley inside his New Jersey home when the pin setter malfunctioned. He tried to fix it himself, something his team said he had done 100 times before without issue, since the machine had a history of easy, minor fixes. This time, his dominant right hand became wedged between the mechanism's fork and a second rod. In a Today Show interview days later, he described reaching behind the machine to fix it, turning his head for just a second, and feeling his hand get wedged before the blunt metal rod drove through it. According to his representatives, that rod, roughly 1.5 inches long, repeatedly stabbed through his hand 3 times between his ring finger and middle finger, while he was trapped and unable to pull free. More than 5 minutes passed before his teenage sons, 16-year-old Buddy Jr. and 13-year-old Marco, working alongside his brother-in-law, Joe Fogno, finally freed him using pliers and a reciprocating saw, cutting through the machine under enormous pressure while their father remained pinned inside it. He was rushed to Morristown Memorial for emergency surgery that night, then transferred the next day to the Hospital for Special Surgery in Manhattan for a follow-up procedure to repair severe tendon, nerve, and muscle damage. In the days that followed, he shared a hospital photo online, his hand wrapped thick in bandages, joking about his new accessory, even as the severity of the damage became clear. He underwent a second surgery within the week and a third by late October 2020, telling followers it had been a rough road but that he was hanging in there. But just when fans thought he'd return fully, the hospital refused to let him go. Surgeries and more challenges. Over the years that followed, Buddy underwent 5 separate surgeries in total to rebuild function in the hand that had decorated thousands of cakes on national television, with the 5th and final procedure not coming until October 14, 2025, 5 years after the original injury, performed by Dr. Carlson and the team at HSS. He has since said the recovery tested him in ways the cameras rarely captured, requiring months of physical therapy just to hold a piping bag again. Think about what that hand actually represented. In the days right after the accident, Buddy admitted publicly that even a small paper cut normally infuriated him because his hands were his lifeline, and that he genuinely didn't know if he'd ever be able to work the way he used to. This wasn't just an injury to a television personality. That may have been milder. It was an injury to the same hands an 11-year-old had trained since childhood. The hands that had piped frosting through 18-hour days after his father died. The hands his entire identity and livelihood had been built around from the very beginning. For someone whose whole career was precision work with his fingers, this was as close as it gets to a career-ending moment. And it happened not in the bakery, but at home, doing something completely unrelated to baking. Throughout the ordeal, Buddy kept working. He filmed portions of Buddy vs. Duff while still recovering, including footage shot just weeks before his 5th and final surgery, relying on his team to handle the detailed work his hand couldn't manage yet.
One of the things that I love most about my show is that when I travel the world, a lot of people tell me that we inspire them to want to bake. We inspire them to, want to go to culinary school.
Fans watching those episodes had no idea just how limited his mobility actually was behind the confident presentation on screen. By the time of that 5th surgery in the fall of 2025, Buddy said he'd gotten most of his strength and dexterity back, joking in a video update that the one lingering issue was that his tendon had healed on the wrong side of the knuckle, leaving his fingers angled in a way that made it hard for him to fully extend his middle finger. A permanent Spock hand, as he put it, that he never asked for. The accident reshaped how he approached his business going forward, pushing him to lean more heavily on the team he had spent years building around him. A team that had grown, in part, because Cake Boss gave him the resources to hire it in the first place. It's worth noting that the accident happened almost exactly 3 months before Cake Boss aired its final new episode on December 12, 2020. Across 10 seasons and 257 episodes, it had become one of reality television's longest-running success stories, and it ended almost exactly as unceremoniously as it had once begun. Some longtime viewers only realized the show was gone for good months later, when no new season appeared where one usually would have. Around the same period, away from the accident and the ending of the show, Carlo's Bakery was also dealing with a very different kind of trouble in the courts, one that had nothing to do with cake, and never made headlines the way the accident or the arrest did. A retail associate at the company's Times Square location, who worked there from October 2019 to October 2020, sued the bakery under New York's wage laws, arguing she should have been classified and paid weekly as a manual worker rather than bi-weekly, since her job involved running the register, prepping coffee, restocking shelves, and cleaning the store. In 2022, a New York court sided with her in part, granting summary judgment on the pay frequency claim. It's a footnote in the larger story, but a reminder that a fast-growing, camera-ready brand came with legal exposure that never fit neatly into a 42-minute episode. The case never generated the same headlines as the bowling accident or the DUI arrest, and it barely registered with the show's fan base. But it was a reminder that running a fast-growing, camera-ready brand came with legal exposure that had nothing to do with cake at all. So behind every viral cake reveal that got audiences hyped up was a company managing payroll disputes, staffing complaints, and the ordinary friction of running a multi-state retail operation, none of which fit neatly into a 42-minute episode. By this point, the empire that had grown around the show was already starting to change shape, too. An empire that adjusted. Carlo's Bakery operated more than 20 locations at its peak, stretching from New Jersey to Texas, with an outpost as far away as São Paulo, Brazil. But starting around 2018, that footprint began to shrink. The Westfield, New Jersey location closed that year. Morristown and Ridgewood followed in early 2019. The Marlton store, opened with considerable fanfare in 2014, shut down permanently a decade later. In 2026, the Lehigh Valley location inside a Bethlehem, Pennsylvania outlet mall closed with little explanation beyond a note thanking customers for their loyalty. But the same stretch of years that saw those closures also saw Buddy build outward in a different direction, away from strip malls and toward tourist corridors. He had opened Buddy V's Ristorante at the Grand Canal Shops inside the Venetian in Las Vegas back in 2013, followed by a Carlo's Bake Shop location across the hallway in 2014. In 2020, in the same year as the bowling accident, he opened Pizza Cake at Harrah's Las Vegas. Two more Vegas concepts, the Boss Cafe and Buddy's Jersey Eats, opened at the Link Hotel in 2022. In February and April of 2024, he opened a 1,200-square-foot flagship Carlo's Bake Shop at 1500 Broadway in the heart of Times Square. And that July, he opened Buddy's Boardwalk Empire at Harrah's Resort in Atlantic City. Carlo's Cake Slices and an Every Buddy's Cakes line also landed on shelves at Walmart nationally, alongside a growing e-commerce shipping operation out of Hoboken. None of this was framed by the company as a crisis, and it shouldn't be mistaken for one. Businesses that expand fast during a hit show's peak years often right-size once that cultural moment passes. That's a company adjusting its footprint to match a changed media landscape, closing underperforming suburban stores while opening flashier ones in Times Square, Atlantic City, and Las Vegas, and still running plenty of successful locations elsewhere. And then there's the show. Like many other shows, Cake Boss didn't receive a dramatic cancellation announcement. It simply stopped producing new episodes after December 2020, following the bowling accident, without a farewell season or a clear on-air goodbye. Across 10 seasons and 257 episodes, Cake Boss had become one of reality television's longest-running success stories, and it ended almost exactly as unceremoniously as it had once begun. Some longtime viewers only realized the show was gone for good months later, when no new season appeared where one usually would have. There was no finale marketed as a finale, no retrospective special, just an absence that slowly became permanent. But the real story of Buddy Valastro was never that his empire fell apart. It's what he did after the show ended, and after his hand nearly stopped working, that actually answers the question of what happened to him. Where Buddy stands now. The end of Cake Boss didn't mean the end of Buddy Valastro on television. If anything, it forced him to prove that people were interested in Buddy Valastro, not just the show that made his name famous. He moved into a string of new projects, including Buddy vs. Duff, where he went head-to-head with fellow celebrity baker Duff Goldman in elaborate cake competitions. The series turned Buddy's reputation as a competitive cake maker into the premise itself, putting him in a completely different environment from the family-run chaos of Carlo's Bakery. He also appeared in Buddy's Family Vacation, Bake You Rich, and other food-focused projects, while continuing to develop new concepts around the Carlo's brand. Carlo's Bakery is still operating today. Buddy, alongside his wife Lisa, continues to run the business, and made his television comeback in 2023 with 2 new shows on A&E, Legends of the Fork and Buddy Valastro's Cake Dynasty, plus a holiday special called Yes Chef Christmas on Lifetime. On Cake Dynasty, his sister Madalena and brother-in-law Mauro have also become regular fixtures, and the show has captured family milestones on camera, including the moment Buddy noted that his oldest son, Buddy III, had become the first Valastro in the family's history to graduate high school. He opened that flagship Carlo's Bakery in Times Square in the spring of 2024 and spoke about the experience like it was a dream fulfilled, describing the energy of the neighborhood as proof of exactly why immigrants like his father had once come to America in the first place. In June 2026, he and Lisa opened a speakeasy called Dolce Notte inside Buddy V's Ristorante at the Venetian in Las Vegas, built around the idea of a hidden door and old-world storytelling that he said he'd always wanted to bring to a Vegas property. None of that happens if the hand doesn't heal. That's the part worth sitting with. A man whose entire identity was built on what his hands could do spent 5 years and 5 surgeries rebuilding them, and came out the other side still designing, still appearing on camera, still expanding a business that started with an 11-year-old washing bowls and cleaning toilets for his father. For someone whose story includes burying his father as a teenager, a public arrest that nearly derailed his image, and an accident that nearly cost him the use of his own hands, Buddy's continued presence in the industry says a lot about how he chose to handle every setback that came his way. He remains exactly where he started, in the kitchen, still building something with the same hands that almost got taken from him. Do you think Buddy Valastro's story would have played out the same way without the show? And did Cake Boss change the direction of his life for good? Share your thoughts with us in the comment section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.